Today we're on a knitting mission. We're here to rescue the unsung hero of the knitting world, the garter stitch, from the boring stitch garbage bin. I mean, seriously, how can a stitch be boring when it's basically the Swiss Army knife of the knitting toolbox? Sure, at first glance, it might just look like knit, yawn, repeat every row, but looks can be deceiving. This stitch is a chameleon. It's flexible, forgiving, and frankly, a bit of a show-off if you let it do its thing. From squishy scarves to snazzy sweaters, garter stitch does it all. I'm here to convince you. Follow me into the lounge. It's time to garter some respect for this fabulous stitch. We'll start with the basics. What is garter stitch? Garter stitch is simply knit all the stitches on every row. Sounds perfect for a beginner, and we all started our knitting with that quintessential garter stitch scarf, did we not? Or maybe, if you were super ambitious, you started your knitting life with a dishcloth. But don't be fooled by its simplicity. This stitch creates a fabric that's beautifully textured, reversible, stretchy, and squishy. You can't beat the garter stitch squish. Elizabeth Zimmerman said it's a very zen-like stitch, perfectly suited for restful, no-brainer knitting, which makes it ideal for projects that you might want to take to knit night or a knitting retreat or just hanging out with your buddies. And it's martini knitting. What are some advantages of garter stitch? Well, first of all, it's incredibly forgiving and it doesn't curl. No matter what you do to it, it lays completely flat and the edges do not curl, which make it perfect for edges and borders. For example, here's this V-neck sweater where I used garter stitch to create a striped V-neck border. You can swap out any edge, ribbing, or folded, or any other kind for garter stitch anytime, anywhere, anyhow, in my opinion. Also great for color work. It just makes the color segments pop, and it's perfect for modular knitting. I'm going to do a video on modular knitting fairly soon. It's in the works, so stay tuned for that. And when it comes to short rows, working short rows in garter stitch is a snap because you don't have to hide them. You just wrap, turn, and go. This pattern is chock-a-block full of short rows. Not a single one had to be picked up and hidden. And did I mention the squish? Nothing beats the squish of garter stitch. Now let's get into the good stuff and take a look at all the projects that you can do with garter stitch and why, if I haven't convinced you yet, you're going to fall in love with it like I have. I am an advanced knitter. You know that. And yet garter stitch is one of my absolute favorites. I put it in a lot of projects, as you're about to see. We're going to start with sweaters, and I can't talk about garter stitch sweaters without bringing up Elizabeth Zimmerman. And if you don't know who Elizabeth Zimmerman is, I'm going to have a video for you on her too, because the more I look into her, the more fascinating she is. She unfortunately is no longer with us. She died in 1999, but her legacy lives on. She was an amazing knitter and pioneered a number of things that we all use all the time today. One of Elizabeth Zimmerman's most famous designs is the baby surprise jacket. This adorable little smushy number is all knit in a modular fashion, not a purl in sight, and it's incredibly adorable. Did I say that? Did I already say it was adorable? It really is adorable. And although the baby surprise is the garter stitch baby sweater. I also found this pattern by Pearl Soho called Simply the Best Cardigan for Babies, which is also entirely in garter stitch, slightly different design than the one from Elizabeth Zimmerman, but every bit as cute and knittable in a flash, and a great use for all those really sweet multicolored yarns that you have. It looks equally as great in a solid as it would in a multi. When you're working with garter stitch, you can just let the yarn do the talking. You've got the texture and the squish in a very simple form, and then the beautiful colors of your yarn can speak for themselves. I also can't talk about garter stitch without talking about Sally Melville. Sally is a Canadian knitting legend and guru, and the first person I ever took an in-person formal knitting class from. She's also the author of a lot of great books that you really want to consider having in your library. This one, The Knit Stitch, is the first in a series. I have lent this book to so many new knitters, I can hardly count anymore. Fortunately, they keep giving it back because it's got Sally's signature in it. I'll come back to this in a minute to show you how incredible her work is in here and how it will really open your eyes to the possibilities of garter stitch. The second one in the series is the Purl Stitch, which of course builds on the Knit Stitch. And the third book is Color. All three are worth having. I have had them in my library for decades. Back to the Knit Stitch. First, I got to show you this. This is her Einstein coat. And her Einstein coat is seriously a bit of genius. It's a modular knit. The bottom section you see here is knit side to side. So from one center opening around the back of the garment, back to the center opening. And then you knit up the right front, up the back, up the left front, join the shoulders, pick up the sleeves, and knit down to the cuff. It can be knit in any yarn weight you like to create a variety of drapes. And even though it's all one silhouette, it changes radically. Look again, how cute it is on that little kid. Isn't it cute? Like equally as great looking on that adult handsome man as it is on that adorable kid. I did knit myself one once. Here it is. It was incredibly bulky, extraordinarily warm, and saved my butt in one very cold, windy trip to Toronto in November. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore. I think I gave it away to somebody who needed an extra super warm coat. It wasn't really my color. I knit it so long ago, almost 20 years ago, really. I can't even remember what possessed me to knit it in brown. Also in this book is this sweater where she's taken this concept of opaque and sheer. Can you see that? This concept of opaque and sheer. The bottom part of the sweater is opaque, and the upper part from above the bust to the shoulder and the sleeves and the back are sheer. And how she did that, so clever, is for the opaque part, she knits the whole thing in a small needle size. So this is about a sport weight yarn. She knits it on a 3 3/4 millimeter needle, which I think is a 5, if I'm not mistaken. And then for the sheer part, she knits one row with the smaller needle and one row with a really big needle, like a 6.5 millimeter, which would be about a 10. Is that right? I think a 10 in US sizes. Anyway, very cool concept, and takes a sweater that is entirely in garter stitch and really elevates it into something modern and cool. And again, would show off some spectacular but simple yarn in a really fashion forward kind of way. And then with just a little variation on garter stitch, still no purling, you can get this look that looks almost like ribbing, but all this is slipping a particular stitch on the wrong side as you're knitting away front and back. So you're knitting all the stitches on the right side, you're knitting 4, slipping 1, knitting 4, slipping 1, knitting 4, slipping 1 on the wrong side, and that creates this cool striping effect. It's really neat. I've done this. It's like a magic trick. And then this lots of choices top, which looks like a simple V-neck buttoned up vest, is just genius, because what she's done is she's knit 2 pieces from center to center. She's put buttonholes on both sides and buttons on both sides of the other piece so that it buttons up to the V and it buttons up to a crew neck as well. So you can wear it either way. You can have the buttoned crew neck in the front with the button-up V in the back, or a buttoned-up V in the front with a button-up crew in the back. Genius! I mean, so simple, but so genius. That's also got that slip stitch stripe in it, just for that little bit of added interest. Anyway, this is an incredible book. The tutorials that are in here are photo by photo, clear as can be, with incredibly clear written explanations underneath. This is a perfect book to give a beginner knitter, or if you're a little unsure about what you're doing, you've just started, someone taught you and you're a little unsure. I'm not kidding. Get this book. I'm not sponsored by Sally. I'm not getting anything for this, but you need this book. And you may wonder what sweater this is that I'm wearing. This is Carol Feller's Ravi, R-A-V-I. I knit this in about well, not this one. I knit my first one in 2012, and I knit this one a few years later. One of the few sweater patterns that I have knit more than once. And again, this is a garter stitch bordered yoke that starts here and knits around to the front. And then you pick up and do this mesh underneath, and then garter stitch down, pick up from there and garter stitch down for the sleeves. I did a little contrast edging on this one. The original pattern is all one color and it looks equally as stunning. I might have put a smidge more waist shaping into mine than the pattern calls for, but that's what makes it so easy. Any shaping that you do in garter stitch is invisible. Like any of your knit two togethers, you don't even have to do paired increases or decreases because they don't show. You do them in between the garter bumps and they just vanish like the short row wraps. Other sweaters that I've knit that have garter edges that I absolutely love is this Bristol Ivy Newsom cardigan. The whole sort of front wrapped around to the back on this one is garter. So this whole part, you see there, going this way from here down to here is all garter stitch. And then the back of this sweater is stockinette. So all the edges, they need nothing. They're just a cast on or bind off. I can't remember where I started this, but the edges are just clean and sharp and flat and perfect. How can you go wrong? And then a sweater that I have in my queue, talked about this next one. This is the Rippled Jacket by Hinterstein. Pretty sure I talked about this one when I was doing my stash busting video series. And again, the whole front of this jacket is garter edges. So it's another one that's a combination of garter stitch and stockinette. And I'm doing this in a marl of these two yarns together, this navy and this gorgeous blue. And it's going to look like this. And what I really love about this is I love the squish of the garter that's going to be around the front, and it's going to make those that notched collar aspect of it really sharp and cool and easy to do. But I also love that the fabric looks completely different. In the garter, you get more of a horizontal run. You get more of a horizontal run in the fabric than you do in the stockinette, which is more vertical. Isn't that neat? I might have to try to get that one done for the fall because I really want to wear that. How are we doing? Are you convinced yet? If you're having a good time learning something about garter stitch, just real quick, give me a like, that little push the little thumbs up button, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and maybe you want to see some more of my nitty videos. Next up, home decor. Garter stitch really lends itself beautifully to blankets. I could go down a very deep rabbit hole looking at garter stitch blanket patterns on Ravi, but I'll just show you a few to give you an idea of how enamored one can get with what is really just a whole lot of knitting, but not a whole lot of boring. Remember this guy? I showed you this a few videos back. This is my accidental $300 baby blanket. This again is what can be described as modular knitting. If you want to know more about this blanket, just look up there, look up there, look up there. I can't remember where it's going to be. Look up there for the link to this video and you can find out more of this blanket. It's called the 10 stitch blanket. So you're only working 10 little garter stitches at a time as you go around and around and around. So sure, a baby blanket, anybody can stand to knit garter stitch for the size of a baby blanket, right? What about a full-size blanket? Nicole, would you ever knit a full-size blanket in garter stitch? Well, as a matter of fact, yes, I would, and I have. So there, and here it is. This is my Pearl Soho library blanket. I'm going to hold this up. I haven't shown this in a while, so maybe you haven't seen it. I can't remember. Maybe you're looking at the back. You're looking at the back. Here's the front. Look at this beauty. How fab is this? Don't try to tell me this is boring. There's nothing boring about this. And this is knitting, even though, it's big, so you're not going to be able to take it everywhere with you. But I knit, this was my online meeting knitting. I could be on Zoom and hold this down in my lap with my knitting needles kind of below, if you tuck up close enough to the camera, no one can see what you're doing with your hands. So I was knitting away under there. I started this in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. And yeah, it took me quite a while to get it done. I just finished it back in the fall. But that wasn't because it takes forever to knit a garter stitch blanket, just that I didn't work on it that much. I only worked on it here and there between a bazillion other projects. I really loved knitting this because it was very exciting to see it come together as you work up the modular color changes, especially these parts where you're changing really rapidly. Super fun, very cool pattern. Pearl Soho library blanket. And by the way, the links to all of these things I am showing you today will be down in the show notes, which is in the description box below this video. You will just see a little bit of it when you're looking at the video, but if you click on a thing that says more, it will open the whole thing up for you, and there'll be all kinds of cool stuff in there for you to click on and go check out. Another blanket that I thought was super cool and is built on, similar to the Pearl Soho blanket in a modular fashion, but more of a log cabin kind of way, is this one called the ZigZag Zen blanket. I just love the look of it, and so easy to knit, so satisfying. But what about something that's not a blanket, Nicole? Have you knit anything in garter stitch that's not a blanket for home decor? Well, thank you for asking. I'd love to answer that question. As a matter of fact, I have started something that is not a blanket in garter stitch. And this one I know I talked about in my stash busting series. Here's the link to that if you want to go take a look at all the little projects that I found hidden when I was cleaning up and sorting through my stash. You'll see it there. I talked about which ones I was going to keep working on and which ones I wasn't. And this is one I wanted to keep working on. This is the, what's it called? The Physalis. I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be wrong. The Physalis Cushion. Isn't that cool? So this is 2-color. So you're actually striping and doing a bit of mitering, but all in garter stitch. This is as far as I've gotten. I've gotten 3 blocks done so far. These 3. That's going to be cool, eh? Look at that. Wow, every time I see that on camera, I think I really got to get that finished. It looks so cool. I just pinned it together so you can get an idea of what it's going to look like once that final block is in there. So much fun. This is a great travel project. Small little pieces that get sewn together later. Perfect for car knitting and knit night knitting and a little bit martini knitting, although you do have to pay attention to the color changes and the mitering. And now accessories, of course. You can always think your standard garter stitch scarf, cast on blank stitches, knit endless rows, bind off, you're done. Nothing wrong with that. But there's lots of other things you can do with garter stitch that's just a smidge more elevated than that. Starting at only like this much more elevated would be little slippers like these. These are just dead simple little slippers. Now these are not all gartered, just the back end of these are gartered. The top is stockinette. Super simple. I can't even remember what pattern this is. I forgot to look it up. Oscar, would you look it up and tell the people what pattern this is? Thank you. But I also love this pattern, which I haven't tried yet, but is in my pattern library for sure. And it is the simple garter stitch slippers. Look how cool that is. I'm just absolutely in love with those and can't wait to try them out. And while we're on really simple things, how about some dead simple garter stitch fingerless mitts? Here they are. Just take your prettiest yarn. This is a great use for hand spun. If you're a hand spinner or you have friends that do hand spun yarns or you've bought them, I've bought lots of them like on Salt Spring Island and at fiber fairs and stuff. Great use for that. Just let the yarn do the work. This pattern is simply called Fingerless Mitts. It's by Ann Budd. It's in this book, Weekend Knitting, right? Weekend Knitting, 50 Unique Projects and Ideas. And there's the pattern right there. Just quick, easy. If you're doing gift knitting or charity knitting, this is perfect. And again, take it with you, knit in the car, knit at knit night, knit while watching Netflix, and definitely checks all the boxes for martini knitting. Another fun garter stitch accessory I did a long time ago for my handsome man was this Cuba Libra necktie. Check this out. It's, hide my face so you can, it'll focus in. It's modular knit rectangles that get smaller and smaller as you work your way up the tie and then get a little bit bigger again when you get to the other end. Isn't it cool? He actually has worn it. Like he's actually tied it into a tie. Let's test my memory and see if I can remember to do a half Windsor knot. No, that wasn't it. Oh, this is sad. Okay, here, come on. I know how to do this. Okay, around and around and through. And there we go. I got it. So, yeah, you get the idea. This is not a tying demonstration channel. This is a knitting channel. This is knitting. And now I've kind of sort of tied a tie. But you see, it doesn't look half bad, right? Pretty sharp. Just a fine little fingering weight yarn. Very cool. It was really fun to knit this. And this was in Yarn Cocktails for Knitters or something like that. The link will be down below. The next project I've got for you is one I saw in a Knit Scene Accessories magazine from 2015. That goes back a while. And I just instantly fell in love with it. I think it was because of the color. I actually ordered the kit for it from Interweave because I wanted exactly as it showed. Now it is one of these little tiny triangle shawls. So the truth is I did wear it a bit after I first got it because it was pretty simple just to wrap it and pin it. But look, like I'm having trouble with it right now. I don't really like it up around my neck. We've talked about this before. So, and that's about all I can do with a shawl this tiny is put it really close up under my neck. But it's so cute though. And I do love the color combination. I'm not going to wear it though. I just don't. I've had it for 9 years now, and I've only worn it a handful of times. So I think it might be time to pass it on to somebody else who will love it. But don't you just love the sharpness of it? Like it's just extra super deliciously graphic, I think, personally myself. And this guy, which is a garter stitch base with an inserted fancy stitched pattern in between. This pattern is called Waiting for Rain by Sylvia McFadden. I used a sort of recipe in part of this pattern where you can plug and play and put your own stitch pattern into these short row sections in between the garter stitch. But look how amazing that is. So the garter is a perfect background for a little bit of textured or color work or lace or something in the middle. It just makes a really good canvas for popping in lots of interesting other kinds of details. Does that make sense? Clear as mud? Yeah, I think so. Again, this is a big crescent shaped shawl that is beautiful and has these kind of cool little twirly ends that I like. But as usual, I don't wear it because, you know, this looks fine. Nothing wrong with the way this looks right now, but as soon as I get up and start doing things, this is just gonna fall off. So this might have to be another one that I modify into a wearable wrap because I do love this design and fabric. So it's gonna go in my pile of potential wearable wrap over modifications. Here's the link to the wearable wrap over modification series. And then because I couldn't help myself searching Ravelry for garter stitch patterns, here's a few more that I just absolutely fell in love with. So here's the Bevel Scarf, Oak Park, Eden Prairie, and Marelle. I love all of these. They're incredible. The links are all going to be down below. On Eden Prairie, I actually bought this pattern because I was really curious to see how they did that cool little edge around the bottom. Turns out it's intarsia, which, you know, it just leveling up your garter stitch a little bit by adding some intarsia into it, but it's not that bad. I've also seen stranded, and Marelle, that's stranded knitting in garter stitch. Again, something you wouldn't expect and completely different. So, like I said, garter stitch is not boring and can be extremely different and graphic and exciting. I also can't let a talk about garter stitch go by without talking about mosaic knitting, of course. This is my design. This is my mosaic knit Radial City cowl. This is one of the versions. And if you want to learn more about mosaic knitting, and I know that you do, just check out this video right here, and I'll take you and tell you everything you need to know about mosaic knitting and garter stitch and why it's going to be your next favorite thing. So easy. Hope you had fun today. See you next time. Bye.